I want to take you back, if I can. Do you recall that when Congressman Paul Ryan from Wisconsin first came out with his budget? Now, this was a few budgets ago. He's just come out with one recently. But before that, he came out with a budget that everybody loved, and they were going to try and get this budget passed in Congress, which they did, actually, in the House. Of course, it died in the Senate, as this one will. But there was a lot of back and forth about cutting entitlement programs and should they cut entitlement programs. And Paul Ryan is either a genius or he hates old people and he hates the poor. And there was an ad that was run by some Democrats that showed a guy that kind of looked like Paul Ryan pushing a guy off a cliff who was in a wheelchair. Do you recall that? Well, now that we have the Supreme Court today hearing the individual mandate argument, there is a new ad that has been put out by Texas doctors that, kind of the same thing. Take a listen to part of it.
No, I need a pacemaker.
God, I just love that. Any excuse to play it. Joining me right now is Dr. Kristin Held. She is one of the doctors that created this ad. Dr. Held, first of all, hats off. I love the ad.
Oh, good morning, and thank you so much for having me to speak to you. We really want to get the word out because they really have suppressed the voice of the doctors, and we need to let our patients what's going on. I'm actually up in Washington, D.C., getting ready to go to the healthcare rally today.
That is terrific, and I just had our medical expert, Dr. Joe Galati, on, and he weighed in. Dr. Held, if you don't mind, I just want to play this one more time because I love it so much.
No, I need a pacemaker.
Now, Dr. Held, was that ad done because of the ad that was done showing allegedly Congressman Ryan pushing somebody off a cliff?
It absolutely was. We made a parody to respond to that ad because when we saw that ad initially, we were just really struck by, number one, the absurdity of it, and secondly, the misinformation that was, and the misrepresentations that were made to the American people. So we definitely wanted to make this ad, and we particularly chose our patients. We wanted to get everyone's attention with the parody of that ad and react to it, but we particularly chose our patient then to become very serious because her pacemaker versus the painkiller issue is exactly the issue we're talking about, the issue where government will be making our decisions, and the government actually believes that they can make better decisions than we do as doctors and patients, and we wanted to use President Obama, in his own words, in context. So we took that absolute scenario from a town hall meeting where he was speaking to a woman about her elderly mother who had to make the choice between the pacemaker and the painkiller. And he was absolutely right when he said he will let doctors know. And he means it. So we gave him credit for his signature legislation and used his own words in context so that we would not be disrespectful of the president in the office.
Now, Dr. Held, Dr. Kristin Held joining us here, one of the creators of the ad. In just a second, when we come back, I want to ask about the response that you've received from the ad from both sides, what you've heard, and also the Independent Patient Advisory Board. This is kind of the discussion that's been going on back and forth, and of course, that has been voted out. We'll get your thoughts about that, if that makes it any better. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about that. Dr. Held, thanks again for joining us this morning. Love the ad. How has the response been? Both sides. Tell me what both sides are saying.
Okay, well, thank you again for having me back. Both sides, it's been a very interesting response. The majority of patients, and we're all patients. In fact, I'll let you know I just had a breast cancer surgery 3 weeks ago, and I'm very grateful for my doctors. I wouldn't be here without them. And the majority, everyone's a patient. The overwhelming majority of American patients and doctors are behind us 100%. Our response has been 50-1. People, I think, thankfully saying, where has the doctor's voice been? Now, of course, the ones that are against us are just vehemently against us, and you can't really even, reason with those people. They're set in their demagoguery and ideological ways, so we really try not to worry about that. It's like people that support a bad, form of medicine. But we've been really pleased by that, and we feel called as doctors to get the word out to our patients about what this really transformative law does to the American patient.
Dr. Held, let me ask you about the Independent Patient Advisory Board voted out by Congress. That has to make you feel a little bit better.
Well, it really doesn't, because remember this. The House of Representatives voted out the whole law after the 2010 election, but Harry Reid puts that on the desk. It'll never be brought to a vote, and President Obama will veto it. And the IPAB will go the same way. The IPAB is the rationing board, we all know, of appointees. What they need to do is get rid of the entire law, and we need to start with an absolute new reform. You know, as physicians, we're clamoring for reform. We have got to have good patient-centered healthcare reform. Our ad will lead you to a plan, and we need to have an outcome of an election that will ensure that this law, if the Supreme Court does not throw this law out, which I believe they should, because I do believe it's unconstitutional, then we've got to have an election in 2012 that will bring us a new law with good reform. But, you know, the IPAB isn't the only thing. If people will go back and look at the stimulus bill, there is a council in there that was appointed for comparative effectiveness research using $1.1 billion from Medicare in the stimulus law that already exists. Those members were appointed by President Obama. The chairman is his appointee, President Kathleen Sebelius, Secretary of Health and Human Services, and one of those members exemplifies what's going on. It's Ezekiel Emanuel, who is a rationer. He wrote the article in the Lancet 2009 journal about...
Dr. Held, I've got to move on, but I thank you so much. You are an absolute fountain of information, and we appreciate it. But keep up the great work. It is always good to have Texas doctors on with us, and God bless you on your surgery. I hope that you are cancer-free for the rest of your life.